Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar this evening. We'll start the acknowledgement to the country. IIBA Australia acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present with us today. The agenda for that today, this webinar is hosted by Sydney team, which is myself, Sandeep Samuj. The session will be presented by James Barnes. We have Brisbane team here. We'll be doing the Q&A, Ben, and a live poll and the closing will be done by Melbourne team, Tom. Please note today's session is being recorded. By continuing with the session, IIBA has your explicit permission to record a session and share this recording via IIBA platforms, website, social media, and other channels as appropriate. The Festival of Business Analysis, as you're all aware that we made a hard decision to change it to next year. The dates are 21st of March to 25th of March, 2022. It's going to be an online event and in person. And the website is there. You can access more details from there. The in-person events will be held in various cities on the dates mentioned in there: Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, Melbourne, Perth, and Sydney. The theme is responsive, resilient, and reskilled. We have a lot of speakers. These are the speakers who are from locally and internationally as well, who will be doing the presentations in the Festival of Business Analysis. We have a festival showcase which is coming up next month. The dates are 18 to 22nd October. You can save the dates. The showcase will feature some of our keynote speakers, as well as provide an opportunity for you to hear from some of our other speakers about what you can look forward to in March. These sessions are complimentary to members, $5 per webinar for non-members. You can again access more details about the speakers on the website. Additionally, we will hear from our Beyond Blue guest speaker and our IIBA Global Senior Executive. Stay tuned for more details on that. Our presenter, James Barnes, he's the co-founder. He's actually the founder of the SmartBA and the director of BA. And as a business analyst consultancy firm, which he runs and provides project delivery services to both government and commercial sectors. SmartBA is strongly values driven and alongside companies with similar values. The key services provided by SmartBA include strategic business analysis. They are also specialized in business analysis. It's got business capability augmentation to application solutions and business analyst recruitment. James is a member of IIBA, a CPA, and a fellow of Government Institute of Australia. James also provides coaching and mentoring to the BA community, while also continues to provide accounting services to not-for-profit organizations on a pro bono basis. And James, further details are there. Over to you, James.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet, James.
Everyone?
Must be, yeah.
What's happening? Okay. you see my screen now?
No. So let's try that again, James.
Can you see it now? Can we see it?
No, no, James. So are you, yeah, try that again.
So I'm sharing this one. Share. Okay.
It's coming up now, yes. And just seeing your desktop now. So there is no presentation. Yeah, there it is.
All right.
Got it. Perfect.
Okay. All right. A few technical glitches. Not used to this. Well, welcome everyone to the BA journey on an organization's transformation towards sustainability. Don't know how you're feeling, but I hope you're all well. I'm feeling a bit jabbed up today. I had my final one today, so hopefully that gives me a bit of spurt for the evening. So good evening, and thank you very much for attending tonight. I'm going to talk about something a little bit different, transformation, which is about change, why, how, and what does it look like at the end. From an audience perspective, the objective for me today is, for the BAs mainly, is to get an understanding of what value and analysis techniques that we can employ on that business transformation journey. Just this presentation will be on a fairly high level. I'm not going to get too much technical detail, but it's just want to mention all the different things that we can get involved in where we add value. So on that, I'll introduce the agenda. Just going to move it right up the screen. All right, so the agenda tonight, I want to take you through, to begin with, the background of sustainability and why organizations are being driven towards and have a desire to change to a sustainable framework, the external drivers. Then I want to talk about what does a sustainable business actually look like, just some of the key elements of a sustainable business that differentiate themselves from what a current business looks like. I forgot to start my stopwatch, didn't I? And there, from then on, I want to move into the analysis roadmap, both the organization's transformation phases that it goes through, and the second part of that will be the BA's journey and the value that we add and the techniques that we use. And then I'm going to take a bit of a deep dive into business model canvas, which most of us are probably familiar with, and then talk about some of the elements of a business case, both of which would support decision making. And then finally, before we get to Q&A, I just want to talk about some further BA techniques that are used and some of the roles that BAs can have and be a part of that transformation journey. All right. Please feel free, just as we go through this, to post questions up on the, I think it's the chat bit or Q&A. Shri, just remind everyone, that'd be good. I think
yes,
everyone knows where to put questions.
Yes, everyone, please put in your questions, Q&A throughout the presentation, so you don't have to waste for the last minute. So feel free to type your question in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Thank you, everybody. Over to you, James.
All right, thank you. So look, I'll begin with the context and the drivers of change. This slide really is from the external point of view. It's not from the business point of view. It's not from the BA point of view. It's all the external factors driving change for organizations to consider and desire making a change into that sustainable framework. So on a summary, combined actions of a range of parties, including communities, local communities, consumers, employees, regulation authorities, corporations and financial institutions, suggests that there is a momentum towards sustainability. From an investment point of view, financial flows are being redirected towards sustainable practices. And there's a catchphrase at the moment: climate risk is investment risk. And just a point there, Larry Fink, who is the CEO of the largest fund manager in the world, Blackstone Rock, I've forgotten the word now. Anyway, Blackstone, I think it's called. He wrote a letter a couple of years ago, basically saying they're moving away from non-renewable sector and into the renewable sector, because that's where funds are going. That's where capital goes, and capital drives business. And on that, just to underscore that from a empirical basis, up to 20-25% of all assets under investment are now using some form of criteria to measure their sustainability from what they call responsible or impact criteria. And I can talk a little bit about that later, to report their sustainability. And this is non-financial data. The type of assets that are now under investment are also increasing, which implies that the types of industries, not just oil and gas or mining or coal, is happening across different industries. So sustainability is crossing all sorts of industries at the moment. Even small to medium companies are starting to look at being sustainable. It's not just the large global mining companies and people like that, companies like that. It's smaller ones as well, because they're recognized as a brand and marketing enhancement and value add in that. One of the other bigger drivers is the government regulation sector. Overseas, it's happening quite heavily in Europe, and it's been going on for a number of years, and definitely in the USA. And it's certainly happening in certain parts of Asia, particularly Singapore and Korea. Not so much here, we're a bit behind, but it is coming. But from an investment point of view, companies need to think about that. And so companies are adopting these sustainable practices. One of the other key drivers is worker expectation. A lot of employees, particularly the younger generation, they expect their employers to be responsible and adopt newer practices and have a different business model. They're concerned about the climate change. They're concerned about their future, far more so than us older generation or people older than me. So they're a key driver as well. So corporate cultures are changing, and I can name a few that I've worked for where it's just been a really fantastic culture, like Lion or Steadfast Insurance. Another key one is customer preferences. We all go to the supermarket. We all see eco packaging. We all see different products that come from a sustainable, supply chain, and whether it's the packaging or whether it's the food, and even responsible service providers. People are branding themselves with a little green leaf badge. Even in professional services. I read today Chobani. I actually studied Chobani probably about a year ago. I read in the paper today, they now own 56% of the yogurt market in USA. And they are a leading example of what a sustainable practice is. They started out very small about 10 years ago and undertook these principles. And they've got 56% of the market over there, which must be absolutely enormous. The other part I just want to talk about is the positive actions a company can, one of the other drivers, is the positive actions a company can bring to society and environmental change. Just think Tesla and its electric cars and the influence that it's had on Mercedes and now Ford, BMW. Electric cars are coming. In Europe, 2030, you can't buy a diesel car. So, things are changing. Company examples, as I said, are driving, other companies to rethink their models, and that's spreading across different industries. So these are key drivers of change. It's influential across different companies. So just wrapping that up, from a BA perspective, from our community and things that we can do, IT and digital innovation is driving an awful lot of significant change in sustainable business models. And I think we've got a lot that we can add to support transformation going forward. Okay, so if you've got any questions around this, please add them up. Please type them up. All right, so look, that takes me to the next bit. What is a sustainable business? What does it actually look like? So on this slide, I just want to talk about just the elements of the sustainable businesses as apart from a business that's not in the sustainable world. From a definitional point of view, a sustainable business is an enterprise that has minimal negative impact or potentially a positive impact on the global or local environment, local community, society, and obviously the economy. So what is it actually made up of, the company itself, or the organization? Most organizations are going to have some sort of inputs, a conversion process, and an output. And we'll talk about those first. Inputs, they're resourcing, they're sourcing responsibly, going for renewables and things like that. They're conversions, they're using digital innovation, technology to underpin their entire conversion process, e.g. clean technology, digital enhancements. And outputs, responsible products, eco-friendly products, wastage products, that don't end up as plastic in the sea. Fourth key point of a sustainable business, which sets it apart from other businesses, is sustainable businesses are much more aware of all the stakeholders that are involved that they have to deal with. It's not just a business-centric model, which is the older model, which is just profit. It's more about the impact around us and the local community. So it also includes employees, suppliers, customers, and alliances that they may build. These will become part of the model in a sustainable business model. Additionally, a key part of a sustainable business is the mindset. It's quite different. It's pretty open-minded, pretty open exchange, and very open to internal opinion. Management accepts innovation from the younger generation. The business rules have slightly changed, guidelines obviously, and behavioural norms have changed. From a technology innovation point of view, we're not just measuring, they don't just measure financial data anymore. They're measuring non-sustainable data for measurement, because they need to be able to meet the external compliance and guidelines. So they adopt measures such as ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance metrics. That's a key one for the investment industry, and that's actually used to benchmark companies against other companies. But it's a very useful marketing tool too for smaller businesses. So business strategy and management disciplines are now incorporating sustainable development into their framework on a iterative basis, on a continuous improvement basis as well. So that's a key makeup of the business that's in the sustainable world. So that's basically the model. It's slightly different from the older model. It includes a community, and it's got a different mindset, and it's much more used to using technology innovation. So let me take you to the next slide, which is the key part that I want to talk about today. This is the analysis roadmap. The top bar talks about the phases that the transformational journey an organization will take on. It's very, very high level, but it's the key transformation phases. There's the strategic imperatives at the beginning, which I've just discussed, the drivers for change, and that hopefully influences a desire for change within the organization. From the desire to change, you're probably going to get, you should get corporate commitment, the board level or board of directors level, and then therefrom come decisions, which may make a decision about the transformation. Yes, we're going to go on the transformation journey. So there's going to be solution development, planning, and then the implementation of that program or those projects, which will, next phase, you're embedding sustainability at the completion of those programs and projects. And you'll come to that, within that phase, you've got the benefits realization component of it. That puts the company in a position to meet their external compliance obligations, perhaps meet their investment guidelines or increased investment, and it also gives them a position for continuous improvement. They're the key high-level phases of an organization's transformation. So the next bit I really want to talk about with you guys today is the BA value journey and techniques we can bring. What can we bring on that transformation journey? So I've split it up slightly. I've mixed and matched a little bit. There's some strategic stuff in here, and there's some more project or program level stuff in here. So forgive me there. So at the beginning, when they're making a decision, one of the pieces of work we'll do is a business case and a business canvas model. So I'm going to talk about those two in the next couple of slides. So I'll leave that. But then there's the program strategy, and business analysts can get very involved in this. This is usually at the strategic level, but there'll be components where BAs don't work at the strategic level that fill into that. What does a program strategy do? What is it? So it's usually a visual diagram because it has to explain what a program strategy is. Program strategy provides the foundations and the framework for the transformation. It articulates what the outcome should be, and it really identifies what the problem is that you're trying to find a solution to. So usually the artifact from the BA's point of view is what we're doing is we pull together some sort of visual, like a PowerPoint slide, hopefully not like mine, but anyway, it explains, complex problems, what the outcome is, all the different inputs, probably fed from business canvas and the business case. So it helps them think about all the things that they've got to think about, and find a summarized way of looking at all that complex information, what strategy might be going forward. So the next point is sponsorship and governance. This is another strategic piece that you can get involved in. It's part of the IIBA body of work, if you like. This is where a document, you'll pull the document together like a terms of reference document. That would be a key artifact you might deliver. It identifies the deliverables, the timeline, the costs, estimated costs, and it also ensures the executive sponsorship. It also includes the possible program structure, going forward, the organizational structure, and any escalation and roles and responsibilities on the ongoing program. Then there's the stakeholder strategy that you may well get involved in. This identifies who and what groups are going to be involved in this program delivery. And you need to understand who these groups are, because they're going to help you craft user stories as you do your pieces of work during the transformation journey. And also they'll be the key people to go to for any functional design decisions. My advice here, when you're developing this stakeholder strategy, is probably put a matrix together. And it pulls all those different roles and responsibilities and tasks and what to do, escalation, into that one body of one document. So the next piece of work that you could undertake is the execution roadmap. This is a really, this is one of my favorite pieces of artifacts, if you like. I've seen this on many programs, and it's really useful. It's basically a high level of the transformation journey. Who's involved, the sponsors, the key milestones across the journey, what projects are going to be involved, and what streams of work or the projects within those streams. It's a very high level guide for change, and it also feeds into more detailed planning for later on, and the delivery methods that you might want to use. I found, in my experience, it's actually a really great, I've seen it blown up and put in a project war room, or in a project space. It just gives you come in the morning, you just have a look, where are we at? What are we actually doing? I can't remember. And if you're on a very large program, particularly a transformation program that might be enterprise-wide, there's an awful lot of bits and pieces that are being pulled together and need to be managed. It's a great way of envisioning it. So the next bit is the transition strategy and requirements in current and future state. I don't really think I need to talk too much about requirements and gathering in current and future state, but this is all part of that solution planning and implementation. We all know about requirements gathering. I think, so to me, it's pretty staple diet for most business analysts, but I personally find when you're doing the requirements gathering is to build a requirements traceability matrix. And that really helps buy an accountability for the BA and accountability for the program, because by engaging the stakeholders, running workshops, running interviews, and identifying between all those business units and functions what the requirements are, and then tracing them all the way to the solution. And it also binds any vendor and it allows to the solution that actually is developed. It also allows for any identification of what you can and can't do. Current and future state analysis, that's a normal, typical piece of work that I think we would do for the business requirements document, which feeds into the solution, the solution document later on, which in this phase in the solution planning implementation is quite an important piece of work. The transition strategy inputs. This is another piece of work that we as BAs can get involved in. This is a piece of work that you could, it identifies, the purpose of it really is identify what's going to be needed when we transfer into the new BAU world. It's part of the embedding, but it usually kicks off in the implementation phase. That's where you'd start this piece of work. It sort of identifies, what's the sourcing going to be, what's the procurement going to be, what's the ongoing and maintenance going to be for whatever system is going to be put in place. And that's where you capture that sort of information. It would be in that sort of document. The next phase is the change and adoption inputs. We're getting into that embedding stage. We're getting into that change management stage. This would involve strategic level stuff. It would feed off some of the strategy stuff that we've done before, and it would also provide detailed level support to change management requirements that can be required to help embed and bring people on that journey and accept the embedding of the new place. I find it's, for us as business analysts, it's a unique space for us, because we've been on the journey doing requirements gathering, doing current state and future state, engaging stakeholders right across the organization. So we understand some of the let's say sensitivities, some of the stakeholder profiles, whether they're on board and whether they're not. I often find at this point something like a capability matrix and enhancement and stakeholder groupings and analysis are pieces of work that you can do here. I'll bear in mind also, it also builds off that previous work that you've done in the governance model, where you've identified those key groups. So that would move me to the last piece, So just before I go to the last piece, I'll mention these aren't the only things. These are just some of them. And there are another number of other techniques that we can employ, which I'll mention in the next slide. But then we'll get to that next piece of work, lessons learned and metrics. I think a lot of people that have been involved in projects and large projects, if you're still there at the end, you get involved in lessons learned, which is a document. I think some people call it a retrospective, usually on a smaller piece of work. I've never seen it called a retrospective on a large piece of work. It's usually lessons learned. It's part of your project documentation. But this is where the analyst will provide documentation on the status of the project, as in the status of failures, the risks identified, and the opportunities for improvement. And these can be fed into the next phase of the project. Most projects I've been on, programs I've been on, there's always a phase 2. And going back to that, what I was saying in the sustainable model, there's continuous improvement. Most companies, if they're successful companies, they look for continuous improvement. So picking up things in this project, it helps feed into how I'm going to run my next project, obviously. And then there's metrics and KPIs. Now, BABOK teaches us that metrics and KPIs are probably more project and program related. I take a bit of a hybrid approach with this one. We're doing two things here because we've been doing a lot of analysis and we've been part of the solution. Obviously, you develop metrics and KPIs to, get a good status of the progress. Did we measure up? Did the solution work? Did we actually meet the goals and the desired outcome? And when we're doing this, we develop frameworks to, identify those metrics and build them. And you probably have some sort of matrix report that is a lessons learned, a metrics and KPIs report. The second point I just wanted to note here is one of the pieces of work we do in this is in this particular sustainable space is, you might call it a deliverable if you like, but part of the analysis work is we're looking at data that's not normally captured in the ERP. And I would actually, if I was running a project like this, I'd be picking up that piece of work here. So it's an interesting piece to work. It's not just about how did the project or how did the program work. It's also about what's the other contribution I can give to the business in terms of deliverable. Because I'm doing a lot of analysis already, I see that as a deliverable as well. So look, I hope people have got a bit of an understanding of those phases and the steps that we go through on that transitional journey, on that transformational journey. So I'll now move on to just a few of the other techniques. As you can see, I've probably got a dozen on there. I didn't talk about all of them, but you can employ any one of them across any of those phases. Just before I move on to roles, I just want to talk about a couple of them. Obviously, when you're making a decision and you want to get decisions made, you develop business cases. And when you develop business cases in that canvas, which the canvas model picks up the scope of all the things that you've got to consider, you'd be doing a lot of scenario analysis. It also, in the sustainable world, and a lot of reading material, and I've done a couple of courses on this, the uncertainty model is a very, very important model because there's a lot of uncertainty when you're moving away from how we do business now, or have been doing business, into a new world, and it is fairly new. Obviously, there's technology innovation that's moving into renewables. Am I losing customers? Am I losing suppliers? Those sorts of things they've got to consider. So there's a lot of uncertainty about making decisions. So that's a key one. BABOK does have uncertainty modeling, but there are quite a few other ways of modeling uncertainty. So roles, just, what does it mean to us? What's in it? What can I do? I've mentioned quite a few there. The different type of events. Some of us wear completely different hats. Some of us are very singular as an analyst, but you can have roles such as strategic enterprise analyst. It's going to be right up front. Part of that, make a decision making, building the business case, doing the canvas, helping the decision support model. Enterprise architect. I think the two names could be interchangeable. I actually think there's a bit of a difference between the two of them. But then there's going to be roles obviously for IT and digital analysts, data analysts, BI analysts, particularly in that space when it comes to that sustainable data that's non-financial. They're going to be you'll be building a platform. You'll be part of that role. You'll be part of that task. There's definitely space there. normal business process analysts, there's a lot of process rework that would be done across an enterprise and organizations when it comes to reworking their frameworks and organizational capabilities and, you know, the different business units. There might be an org change. There might be, you know, the business model itself might change. So processes will get rewritten. And obviously, if it's an ERP or different piece of software or large piece of software, it's going to be new processes to bring those people together to that platform. You know, it's not just IT, it's also people and the processes bring that together. And obviously, during the course of the implementation, we're going to have test analysts and change analysts. So I just hope that sort of opens minds up to people. That's, you know, there's a lot of us that can fit into that transformation program. So I'll move on to, let's just do a bit of a deep dive on a business model canvas. Now, this is a piece of work it's a tool that you use to get a very good understanding of all the interdependencies between the components so that we can plan and diagnose what we need to do and consider before the strategic plans right up front, you know, for the transformation. It can also help optimize. It's also something that should assist optimizing the future business model. You'll notice two key differences: social impacts and environmental impacts. You won't normally see those in the business model canvas, but I'll talk about those in a minute. But if I just go from left to right, key partnerships. We're moving into a sustainable world. We're going to be thinking about what partnerships we're going to be having, what alliances we're going to be having. Are we going to be, you know, we're moving away from coal to something else? Our supplier matrix is going to change. You know, the profiles of suppliers are going to change. We could be building alliances with different suppliers, you know, like-minded people, you know, are in the same space, want to be in the sustainable world. You don't want to work with someone that's not in the sustainable world because of your branding, you know, and that's part of your marketing. So also you want to understand how you're going to conduct business with it. Is it alliance or is it supplier? From the key activities point of view, obviously, what do we need to do and what is value and what is not? And this is usually focused on the customer, but I also believe it should be focused on suppliers. I think it should be sort of a bit more wholesome than just customers. And obviously, key resources. What's my organization capability and what resources am I going to require? You need to think about those things. The value proposition. What is it that we need to do to identify value and solve customers' problems and expectations? We're moving into something new. We're going to have newer products, a newer way of doing business. What's that going to look like to our customers? Another key thing here is, what do we do to engage our employees and what value do we bring our employees? Because we want to keep them on board. And a key thing here, what value do we provide each customer segment when we've identified them? From a customer relationship point of view, what sort of relationships do we want and how are we going to maintain them? Pretty stock standard business model stuff. But I'll talk about the customer segment thing here. What's the customer current profile? That's another standard. Which new segments are we going to move into, being a sustainable business? And there could well be more. And we need to identify them and what product differentiation between each of those segments are going to be. I'll move into revenue streams because if we've got different customer profiles and different segments, that's going to impact our revenue stream. Obviously, we need to get a good understanding of what our current revenue is, but we need to understand also what the new revenues are. And that, again, the other side of the profit and loss is the costs. What's going to be the revised cost structure? What does renewables actually do? Is there an impact there? And what costs will be beneficial to us, like the efficiency drivers? So those are the key normal business factors that you consider. But when it comes to sustainable business, that wider community, that's what sustainable business is all about, is what are the social impacts. So what are the social impacts and how are we going to measure them? You know, do we want to measure them just internally or do we want to measure them externally as well? Are the impacts going to be positive, neutral, or negative? And what are the impacts on key stakeholders, such as employees, suppliers, and customers from a social point of view, not just a value? Environmental impacts, all the stock standards, you know, if you're in the large business area, environment, ecology, and natural resources. But that can also affect smaller business. Local councils do this. A lot of local councils already have software to measure these sorts of things. And we need to identify the risks, identify the risks of our environmental impact. So the canvas, you know, sort of gives us a good overview of the scope of things that we need to consider to help us start to build a business case. So on that, I will move to what a business case might look like. might not look like. This is really called the elements of the business case that you might want to consider. I'm not building a business case here, but these are only some of the elements, but I just wanted to point out some of these. When building a business case, particularly in this spot, in this space, you're asking the business to move from one place, business as usual, into a sustainable place, which is the future for them. And they'll be thinking they need to find that sweet spot between doing well, as in profitable, to doing good and looking good and being sustainable, which is important. So it's very important for them to hold that productive tension between the driver to make money and the driver to be sustainable. Another part you have to think about is creating an iterative business model. Some businesses might be able to, revamp themselves in 1 year or 2 years, but some it might take 5 to 10 years, and you need to build that into a business plan. You think about the phases and what will be coming. Another key part is keeping ahead of the competition. You need to be aware competition is always part of a business case, but competition, as I said earlier on, companies are being influenced by other companies. So this is where you really need to think about this sort of thing, because other companies are influencing, you might be in competition with them. In the sustainable space, some of the larger companies have actually gotten together, waste reduction in Europe. They've got a conglomerate of companies to all agree on certain basic operating principles. So it could be competition or it could be an alliance. Another key thing, brand reputation. What are the benefits of doing it and what are the costs of doing it? Brand is that's the modern thing. Everyone looks for brand nowadays. Think of the younger generation, they're much more attracted to brand. Another key element of building your business case is employee engagement. What's the value in the build? How do you value that? You're going to have increased, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? Decreased employee turnover, and engagement. What are the costs out of that? And also, another cost or benefit you could measure in this space is what innovation can your employees bring to them. If you've got an open-minded thinking organization, you're going to get a lot of giving, not just taking, but they actually want to contribute to the organization because they want to be a part of the failure of that organization. The other key part, just moving on to the financial side of things, part of being sustainable, I mentioned earlier on, is greater capital flows, greater investment. This is the balance sheet side of things. Is there going to be an impact? Yes, if you increase your sustainable profile, you're going to be able to increase your ability to borrow. I'll give you a live example here, the Adani coal mine. No Australia bank would lend to them. They had to finance overseas. Still went ahead, but no bank here would lend to them. So that's thinking on the balance sheet side of things and the impacts there. From a revenue side, as I mentioned earlier on, we could gain market share. There's people that are interested in sustainable products. We're going to have different customer segments, and we could possibly charge a premium, and some companies do. An example is Lipton Tea. They did a complete revamp of their whole supply chain, but also they understood soil degradation and where they grow tea. So they made it completely renewable at that base level. They charged a premium for it. They took a hit for a couple of years, but then their market share increased because they were seen as a trusted brand from an ecological point of view. And that premium worked and they made a lot more money. From the cost management point of view, renewables, what impact is there? What happens with my conversion costs? That technology point of view, we're talking about the innovation. Leveraging external stakeholders, the alliances that you can build, the community, measuring that, bringing that in, waste reduction, pollution, those sorts of things. And then there's another part that you need to consider is external costs of non-compliance. Enforcement orders, fines from, not meeting your targets or, not meeting government guidelines. And the key and most important part of any business case is the risk and the cost of not doing anything. If I don't move, what happens? And you cannot build a business case without putting in this. So usually when you build a business case, you're going to provide 3 or 4 recommendations to the senior executive team. If this is missing, they've got nothing to work from. You need to give them a baseline. It could be 0, but you work from there. But there's always a risk and there's always a cost of just not moving. And that's part of a business case. So I hope that sort of gives people an idea of considerations that you bring to a business case. By the way, these are only some elements of building that business case. So look, this coming towards the end of the presentation. I hope that people have got something out of it. But what I'd like to do is just make some acknowledgements to Harvard University, which I did a course in, which has contributed a lot of this. Deloitte, who are also actually do a lot of work in the space. IMD Switzerland, where I got a lot of information from, and obviously the Baybock Guide. So just before we move into Q&A, I'd just like to say a big thank you for everyone for listening and attending. And just to shout out, look, if you want to get involved in what I do, please shout out to me. I've got an informal group on LinkedIn, but also just join my website. And if you're in the business and you're looking for the capabilities I've got, let me know. So thank you very much. Let's move on to the Q&A.
Thanks, James. Can I just ask the audience, please make sure you enter all your questions into the Q&A box, and I'll read it out to James to answer. James, we've got one coming up here from Ronald. It's had a couple of interests here around, in regards to one of your slides previously, you had one about providing requirements gathering after roadmap execution. Could you elaborate why you would do that?
So on this slide, sorry, can you ask the question again?
So the question was, why do we do the requirements gathering after execution roadmaps?
Requirements gathering, okay, you can do some very high level requirements, and you do high level requirements when you do a business case. When I'm talking about requirements gathering here, I'm talking about that very detailed level, which feeds into the solution itself. But there's a couple of phases to requirements gathering. You'll always do higher level requirements when you're building a business case and an execution roadmap. But when I'm to this point here, I'm making this at a much more detailed level, line by line requirements that are going to be required.
Excellent.
Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah. So Ron's also asked, what are the continuous improvement models used by organizations in today apart from Lean, Six Sigma?
That's a very, so continuous improvement, obviously, these Lean Six Sigma, that's a very business analysis framework, if you like, and I think that's in the domain of the business analysts, but not really across the wide organization. You'd build frameworks, some finance guys will build frameworks, they've got targets, other people have production targets, that, and they'll build some sort of continuous improvement. They expect some benefits. You'll build a model for benefit realization. That will form and feed into your, what's the question again? Sorry, feed into your continuous improvement. So have I met the benefits that I set myself a target for? So maybe it is captured in Lean Six Sigma. I'm not particularly familiar with Lean Six Sigma. I've come across it in organizations. I'm not trained in it, but I'm familiar with other models.
Excellent, thanks. Carl, oh, sorry, I just jumped around. Carl's asking, in my experience, the biggest barriers to sustainability transformation in organizations is the mindset. What advice would you give to BAs who want to contribute to the shift to sustainability? Okay.
So that's a really interesting question. BAs, I find, I'll draw a parallel. I find that BAs, I myself, certainly, you're in a position of influencing. You're in a position because you're meeting stakeholders all the time. You're engaging with a change manager. And part of when I've worked on projects is you're very sensitive to stakeholders, and you're there usually for change, and that could be quite scary for people. So I'm very careful about what you say and be aware of the direction it's going. So the program is going, it's there for change, it's going to upset people, people are going to lose their jobs, there's going to be impacts, and you're going to need information out of those people. So you get the big picture. That's what I tend to do before I engage a stakeholder. What does the executive actually want? What's the brief here? So I've got that mindset before I go and engage stakeholders. So I know the context. I would be doing exactly the same thing. When I'm out there meeting stakeholders, what is the mindset that's coming from the top that needs to be promulgated further down the chain? And I'm there as a bit of a change agent. And part of the role as a BA is you've got to get information out of people that may well lose their jobs, and they might not want to talk to you. And they're key people, and you've got to be able to do that elicitation and that interchange with a level of confidence, without, so that they want to open up, they want to be trustworthy, they want to trust you. And your part is also giving them an understanding of what you're doing. And I think mindset is part of that. And the vision, like, this is why we're on the transformation. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is where we're going to go. These are the benefits of where we're going. I think does that answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. It's kind of similar vein, I think. How do we organize grassroots momentum for real change? So whether citizens, communities, business leaders, we're all participating, committing, and understanding the problem, executing towards known climate solutions.
Sorry, can you repeat that question again? It's quite a long question.
So I think they're after So how do we organize grassroots momentum from business leaders, the community, the citizens around executing known climate solutions?
As a business analyst, I'm not quite sure. I think we're probably very small in that whole. That's a very, very large picture that was just drawn there. I think we're usually embedded within organisation. We're not leaders of change, as part of community leaders. But let's think of IIBA. We can go out and spread the message if you like. It's not a very easy question to answer. I don't think we're in a position to directly influence, but spread the message. I think when you work for organizations that are under transformational change into the sustainable world, you can help promulgate the message, internally with it, but communities are volunteer work. This is what we do. We're a sustainable organization. We've got a badge for it. So, that's a pretty difficult question to answer. I'm sorry.
It's very broad.
Very, very wide question.
Dale's asked here, what's the best book on how to make a company sustainable?
What's the best book?
A book.
I don't. Sorry, book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of material out there. A hell of a lot of material. I can't name a book off the top of my head, to be honest, because I actually haven't read a book. I've done everything online on this. But if he wants to email me, I can find out for you for sure. Definitely. I've done an awful lot of research in this space, and I think if you look up Deloitte, you'll find quite a bit of stuff from them. They're very useful. I actually did the course with Harvard, and that's where I learned an awful lot of this stuff from. But I can't name a book. Sorry.
All right. we can put some answers into the follow-on emails.
Okay, sure. I'm happy because I'm going to continue down this path anyway. So if he sends me an email address or whatever, I'll forward what I find out for sure. Because this is the journey SmartBA is going to go on. So
interesting question from Vimal. He's asking, how do we know which area of the organisation has negative impacts on the environment? Is there a right step towards analysis? Is there BA tools we can use? Is there something that in that tool set that we can use to find things that negatively impact the environment?
In the BABOK tool set, yeah, good question. Maybe throw it out someone else it's more senior here. I couldn't really put my finger on it because the measurements that measure sustainability are those ones I was talking about, ESG earlier on, and triple line reporting. They're usually measurements that are externally provided. They're benchmarking measurements. They're metrics. You can go online and find the metrics and build them into a framework, and that's what I was talking about BI Analyst earlier on. You can go online and build those metrics and then align them with the external metrics and see where you benchmark with your industry standard, and you'd build them into a framework for the business so they can measure where they are now and where they move in a year's time or 2 years' time. But I can't think of a standard BABOK technique. No, not off the top of my head, sorry. I'm sure there is something in there that could support that.
Yeah.
But when it just to finish that, when it comes to measuring sustainability, it's not usually productive data or financial data, it's specific data. And it's quite difficult to measure. And there's still an awful lot of debate. That's why it hasn't been completely accepted. Otherwise, it would have been accepted 25 years ago. I studied triple line reporting back in the early 90s, and I was told don't bother because no one's going to use it. Well, I actually found so much interest in it, I'm still here. So, but it's not fully accepted. It's not part of accounting standards yet. It should be, but it's not. But ESG has come in, and that's come in Europe, very big time in the USA, and it drives investment. So yeah, you can build an internal framework based on those metrics. And sorry, just on top of that, I have also discovered in my travels recently that there are actually off-the-shelf pieces of software that measure it for you, and you can build those into your platform.
Excellent, thanks. Carl's asked, do you have any examples of organizations that have developed stakeholder requirements beyond the customer, so suppliers, community, future generations?
Just ask the question again. Have I an example?
Do you have any stories or examples of organizations you might have worked with that have developed stakeholder requirements beyond the customer?
Well, yeah, as in the internal customer, I'm assuming. Yes, I have. Yes, I've worked with companies that do require the requirements of what their suppliers are going to need, and I did a piece of work with ANSTO, the nuclear research people, where we had to do requirements based on the suppliers, because it's obviously very, let's say, specialized equipment, or specialized, it's in the radiation business, for goodness sake. So they're going to have specific requirements that they have to be met to meet, ANSTO's own internal requirements. So yes, I have come across that. There are organizations that consider suppliers, vendors, and the local community. Another example, ANSTO, that a lot of federal government agencies now, the requirement is the Aboriginal community, the Islander community, the Indigenous community, sorry, is they are now, they've got to be integrated into businesses. There's got to be, that federal agencies are driving that push. It's starting at that level. I think it was a project called Project William or something that ensures that is actually happening. So their requirements need to be taken on board. Yeah.
Yeah, no, excellent. Ronald's asked here, what is the best way to embrace sustainable change?
What is the best way to embrace sustainable change? Well, do you want to stay here or don't you? Do you want to see climate change happening? So, do you want to smile at the future, or do you want to see all these wildfires happening, bad weather? That to me is a big driver. We can all see it. Some people are denying it, but I think at the back of our minds, we're all humans and got a conscience, and that's why I'm in this game. That's what drives me personally. Not sure if we're running out of question time yet. We've got one more, have we?
Yeah, I think one more. How do we ensure transition for workers, so the transformation journey is more positive experience for impacted workers?
For impact workers?
Yeah. So for employees, are retrained or have to upskill.
Look, that is usually a very senior management role, and it's got to be pushed down. That is their job. If they want to retain their employee workforce, that's their role. They've got to build in culture, and that's where you bring in the P&C people or HR or whatever. They need to drive that. And it's all about values. What's the company's values, and how do they promulgate that down the workforce? And if people don't accept those values, well, they probably shouldn't be in that company. But that's usually a senior management piece of work. It's not for a business analyst. Yes, we can certainly help it. We can certainly identify from stakeholder analysis who's on and who's not, and feed that back into change management. We definitely have a piece of work there that we can assist with, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions we've got here, James.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the questions. So do I stop sharing my screen now or something, or?
Yeah, we'll just move on to the, we'll just have to wrap up. We've got the sort of live poll of what people's one-word summary of the night has been, and we can have a look at that now. One sec. Here we go. I think everyone can see that.
Yes, Tom. Tom, would you be able to share the link in the chat as well so people can access?
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
copy the link, please. Thank you.
Sure thing.
So just copy the link.
Just from here, that should be fine.
From here. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Let's see, where can I find that chat? Maybe I'll have to, here it is. Here you go, everyone. So maybe I'll start. I think tonight was amazing. And we can start from there. We'll see what everyone, how everyone goes. The big winner so far is informative more than any other.
This is being recorded, isn't it, Shereen?
That's right. So yeah, I think the recording as well as the slide packs, I've gone over this in the live chat, that these will be available for everyone after the conclusion of the event. And I hope everyone's enjoyed. After this little summary of our how everything's gone, we'll say goodnight to everyone. But it's been a great time having everyone here and having all the information we have tonight. So thanks for coming, everybody.
Sustainable, love it.
I think we get the idea. We've got the sort of